The Warriors, they take on the Suns with Kevin Durant playing in front of fans in the Bay for the first time since he left the franchise. How about that? And Chris Paul, what about him? His debut against the team that dealt him away? I mean, the NBA schedule makers, they brought the heat right out the gate with the teams with the 4 best odds to win the West squaring off tonight to start the season. Then the Nuggets, as you can see, and deservedly so, they are being recognized as the clear favorites to win the West. But that begs the question, Kendrick Perkins, who has the best chance? Who is the biggest challenger to Denver?
Challenger. Did you buy a new car?
He was sitting on that one.
Who's going to win the West? The Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns, KD, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker. Right, we're talking about 3 of the most prolific scorers to ever play the game of basketball that's in the league on one team. Don't come give me this nonsense about who is the point guard, because all of these guys are underrated playmakers. On top of that, you know the guy that doesn't get enough credit? He don't put a jersey on. His name is Frank Vogel, a hell of a coach, a guy that knows how to get a championship caliber team to buy in and believe in his system, not just on the offensive end, but on the defense as well. So I'm not going with the challenger. I'm going with who's going to win the West, in my opinion, and that's the Phoenix Suns.
I'm going with Phoenix as well. And look, there's been more failed experiments than not of throwing stars together, short window, win now. We know that. There's a long list of those. Here's why I think this one's different. To Perk's point, you have 3 guys now that can all operate out of ball screen initially. They can all play mid-range, and here's the big X factor. They're all catch-and-shoot players at an elite level, so they're very comfortable waiting when the ball does get kicked. They don't have to put it back down on the floor. They can rise up and shoot the basketball. So the spacing and flow should be good immediately, and they've added enough to that roster. We were terrified in the summer. Like, who are these guys playing with? They actually went out there and picked up some nice pieces. Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, Nurkic. They rounded out the rest of the team with that offense at the top. The Suns clearly, to me, the challenger in the West that the Nuggets are most concerned about.
I have a question for y'all. Can you guys fill in the blank? Offense sells tickets.
Defense wins championships.
Wins championships. Is anyone concerned about the Phoenix Suns and their defense?
That's less true now than it was 10 or 15 years ago. If you look at the analytics of it, last 10, 15 years, it's flipped a little bit that elite offensive teams are more likely to get further than elite defensive teams. The reality is you have to be good at both. I think the Suns' formula is going to be elite offense. Yeah. Can we get average to slightly above average defense? Kind of similar to how Denver won it. That's a formula that can win.
But when you're playing for something, your whole mindset change. Like guys that we don't look at that are defensive, that are offensive players, all of a sudden when they're playing for a championship, they could buy into being a defender. Like we're going to see Damian Lillard. We're going to see a Bradley Beal. We're going to see a Devin Booker fighting to get over screens. We're going to see a Kevin Durant actually go and challenge a lot of shots at the basket. When you're playing for a championship, hell, we had Eddie House and Ray Allen defending.
Yeah. Well, we started this conversation.
No, it's not what we did.
By setting out the 4 teams that have the best odds to win the West. And one of them, last I checked, is playing tonight, and nobody mentioned the Golden State Warriors. How far is the drop-off between the 3 teams that we were discussing, the Nuggets, the Lakers, and the Suns, and Golden State?
First of all, do I have to drink because we had a 2008 Celtics reference already?
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Is that water in your cup?
No comment. The Warriors are not that far. The Warriors just have to sort of figure out their identity again. I'm looking at 2 things. Number 1, Klay Thompson. Number 2, how do they handle that rotation with Draymond Green in center? Can they find that kind of lineup? But they're not. They are one of the few teams, maybe 6 or 7, who have the goods, if they're healthy, to win 4 playoff series. I'm not burying those dudes, that trio of guys, until they're dead and gone.
We're going to dig into the game preview a little bit later, but Perk, when Zach mentions Klay Thompson, what do you expect from him this year after struggling a little bit by his own admission?
I expect him to ball out. You know, I think this is the perfect time for Klay to remind the world of who he is. He had a full preseason, a full training camp under his belt. And again, you know, Klay won his letters. And at the end of the day, he got his rings, he got his hardware, he got all that. He's able to talk his talk, but he won his big deal. And I think Klay is going to go out there and do Klay-type thing.
Yeah, and I also think that the acquisition of Chris Paul is to help someone like Klay Thompson, especially as, they get older. Steph can run the point. Draymond is a good facilitator, but have someone who in his one preseason game came off of the bench and had 9 assists in 30 minutes. That's what Chris Paul is going to be asked for. So I think it takes pressure off of Klay. Also, the improved development of Jonathan Kuminga is so important. Don't sleep on those guys that are the second tier that we talk about for the Warriors that can actually help with their depth and also take some of that pressure off of their.
And people forget last year, look, Klay had a slow start. He did not finish well, obviously did not play well in that last series, but he was sensational for a 2 to 3 month stretch in a regular season. It looked like Klay Thompson from 4 or 5 years ago. So I think he is going to be primed to have a year like that and finish it off the same way without that drop-off that he had against a physical, athletic Lakers defense. I think Klay Thompson is back. Getting Wiggins back also.
Yep,
think about how much time he missed. And coming back in right before the playoffs, he was their second best player when they won a championship 2 years ago. He's back, starting the season in the right frame of mind and ready to go. That's a massive addition.
To the pair, they have tons of history against one another, with one another. This game, it could prove to be that next chapter. The Warriors, they are a slight home favorite, as you can see here, while Caesars has Curry and Durant with point totals well over 25 points, as our senior insider Adrian Wojnarowski joins us as well as we dive into all that is Golden State versus the Phoenix Suns. So I just want to start here. Tim, we talked about this a little bit earlier in the show about what Golden State needs to do to establish themselves as a true contender. To you, what is that?
Number of things, but I'll focus on their big acquisition. Right? Okay. Let's just talk about Chris Paul. And I was out there 2 weeks ago, and I talked to all the principal characters, talked to Chris Paul, and it was interesting because I think it's a valid question when you start talking about style and fit and pace. I just think it's legitimate. I could tell, though, as accommodating as he was, as nice as he was, that struck a chord. That bothered him. The fact that he was even asked that. Can you fit in with the style? You play slow. You handle the ball a lot. Here they play fast. The ball moves through the air. You have to cut off the ball. I think it's a valid question, and I need to see that. If this is a seamless integration, if Chris Paul fits in with these guys and accomplishes, by the way, what every single person I talked to said, it was almost like a mantra they were given. From Mike Dunleavy Jr. to Steve Kerr to Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, they all said the same thing. We turn the ball over too much. He is addressing that. We're going to have better shot quality with Chris Paul on the floor. So if he addresses that and doesn't slow them down or affect their pace, Golden State Warriors are going to be in good shape.
We're not that far removed from them winning the championship.
Yeah.
And they were a good team last year. They're a better team now than they were last year, in part because of the Jordan Poole, Chris Paul trade. 2 things need to happen for me for them to win again or even get to the finals again. Number 1, we got to see Klay be peak Klay when it really matters again. He was peak Klay at times last year. He led the league in threes, but not in the playoffs. And the second thing, underrated thing about the Warriors, they haven't really found death lineup 3.0. The Draymond at center lineup that has enough size and enough spacing that it becomes unguardable. They couldn't find that last year. They were playing non-shooters. The Chris Paul version, I think, in place of Looney, is too small. Can they find it internally? Is there a group there? Because that is when the Warriors become the Warriors.
Right, and you mentioned Draymond Green. Of course, he is out for this opener. Woj, what more can you tell us about when we might expect to see Draymond back on the floor?
Yeah, I'm told he's literally day-to-day now. He could make his debut at any time, including their second game of the season against the Kings later this week, Houston on Sunday. But the expectation is while he's not out there on opening night, Draymond Green is going to be back very soon.
And you can see him there getting a couple of shots up in the Warriors practice facility.
And that's the question, though. Draymond Green. How does Chris Paul affect Draymond Green, or how does Draymond Green affect Chris Paul? You look at all the contenders that we look at that are contenders, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Boston Celtics, the Phoenix Suns, the Denver Nuggets, the Lakers, and we all point at who's going to close the game. Draymond Green is actually the Golden State Warriors point guard. He has been their point guard over the last, 2 or 3 years. He's the facilitator. Steph is playing off the ball. Draymond is pushing the pace. How do Chris Paul fit in that? Is he going to be willing to sacrifice some nights of not being in there when it matters the most? And another thing, it's the trust of Steve Kerr far as the trust factor with Jonathan Kuminga. Like, he's going to have to let this young man play through his mistakes. He have to.
Well, Chris Paul is going to be one of the new players in a new place that we're going to see tonight, but he's not the only star who has moved this offseason, right? Sun star Bradley Beal, he was traded to Phoenix this summer. What is Beal's status for tonight?
Yeah, Beal, I was told he was actually feeling better today. Those back spasms he was having, that he's truly going to be a game-time decision tonight. But at the same time, I think there's still an expectation that they don't want to push him out there if he's not 100%, even though it's opening night. You know, everybody wants to see this group together. But I was told it was a little closer to possible this afternoon than it was this morning. You know, they'll let him test it out pregame, but they're still going to be cautious with Bradley Beal. So, listen, he would love to be out there. They would love to have him out there. But this is a team that's trying to play into June. You know, they can sacrifice opening night.
I mean, and the fans' legs would love to see him out there.
When I heard he might not play, I was like, damn, Perk. I mean, right off the bat. Listen, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with his back, but I just thought you couldn't have dialed up a tastier opening night, right? And we want to see what that looks like,
right?
Particularly against that team, right? And so we were salivating to see it, and we'll get it down the road, I guess, if he doesn't play tonight. Hopefully he does. But, man, you can't ask for a better doubleheader. But that was a big part of it. I want to see all three of those guys so we can talk about what this offense looks like tomorrow.
This is the bellwether. This is the matchup that we all want to see. We will see if Bradley Beal is out there. He is feeling better, but we will see whether or not that ends up with him playing in tonight's season opener. Woj, thank you so much.